Joe Biden strengthening his bid for the White House, but votes are still being counted. When you look at Pennsylvania, so much of those votes coming in, they were mail-in ballots. They skewed Democrat. Give us the latest of this picture across the country. Pennsylvania on mine, Nevada, Georgia.
Right. Those are the states, Anne-Marie, where Joe Biden could declare victory. If his current vote total, current Electoral College vote total holds, he will, including Arizona, which in some cases is being disputed, he only needs one of those three states, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Georgia. If it doesn't hold in Arizona, he could win with Pennsylvania. So it's really all about the math right now and that vote counting, which is going on in those states. Very, very serious vote counting. There are those mail-in ballots that do skew Democratic, and that is why we are seeing the numbers of votes that are attributed to Joe Biden go up and surpassing, in some cases, are coming very close to the counts for the president. In Georgia, Joe Biden is now about 3,600 votes away from the president, and in Pennsylvania, his vote total has narrowed to less than 50,000. With those votes coming from places like the Philadelphia area that are heavily Democratic, those mail-in ballots that are now coming in, that are now being counted, that have come in.
Yeah, so Jody, I guess on that point, in terms of timing, is it the next 60 minutes? Do we know before New York wakes up, say in the next couple hours? When will we know who's won is the key question.
Yeah, that's the question of the day, the hour, the week, right, David? Nobody really knows because, again, there's many, many votes to be counted, especially a place like Philadelphia, where they really had such a surge in mail-in ballots, and they weren't allowed to count them until Election Day. They had always warned it would take a while to count these votes. Now, Donald Trump's argument is, hey, I'm ahead. What is happening here? He alleged in a statement that he gave at the White House that there was unfairness in the voting, that this election was being stolen from him, though he had no evidence to that point. But the reason that it's taking so long to count these is there's a lot of ballots. It was unprecedented mail-in and early voting across the country. And again, that tends to skew Democratic. People who voted in person when the votes were counted right away tend to skew Republican. That's why we're seeing these changes in the distribution of the votes in a number of these states, including all these states that have been close to call.
And Jody, of course, we're seeing this unprecedented level of voting because of the pandemic as well. People just didn't want to leave their homes for the most part. I want to ask you two questions from your experience. One is, if Joe Biden does hit that 270, do you expect him to come out and declare victory? Normally, there is this tradition in America that the loser of the race would call the winner and concede. And then the following part on that is, how are these legal challenges going to proceed?
Yeah, I mean, we don't exactly know what's going to happen with any of this. We're in, uncharted territory. The pandemic has thrown everything into this crazy year, right? Has disrupted everything. One would presume that Joe Biden, who's come out every day and made a statement about how the vote counting is going, one would presume when he gets to 270 that he would declare victory and he would give a speech. Given that Donald Trump, he's only since Election Day just had two statements, both at the White House, both blaming the Democrats for trying to steal the election and saying without any evidence that he had won. So it doesn't seem like he is likely to concede, or certainly not concede right away. The vote challenges are across many fronts, but the Trump camp basically is trying to look into the vote counting, trying to invalidate ballots where they can, including, one place 53 ballots in Georgia. So they have a number of legal challenges, and one could assume even when Joe Biden, if he gets to 270 and the Electoral College victory, that there will still be legal challenges that could be going on for weeks. Also in the Senate, we don't know the outcome of the Senate yet, and we probably won't know until January because there are two races in Georgia that are likely to go to runoffs, one of them on January 5th.
We have never seen really other than, well, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this from a president of the United States. And I think, as Jake said, it's sad and it is truly pathetic. And of course it is dangerous, and of course it will go to courts. But you'll notice the president did not have any evidence presented at all. Nothing. No real, actual evidence of any kind of fraud. He talked about people putting up papers in windows. He talked about things that he'd seen on the internet. That is the president of the United States. That is the most powerful person in the world. And we see him like an obese turtle on his back, flailing in the hot sun, realizing his time is over. But he just hasn't accepted it, and he wants to take everybody down with him, including this country. Gloria?
You know, I think that the world is watching, and they're watching an American president undermine democracy in the United States. It's painful to those of us who love America. It is painful and dangerous what he's doing. It is not surprising, of course, because he told us early on that if he didn't win, he was going to say the election was rigged, and maybe we didn't believe he would come out and do it in this way. But it is still startling to us to just hear the president from a podium in the White House undermine democracy. And as Jake was saying before, I have to keep saying, if this was such a big plot by Democrats, why didn't they do better? Why didn't they do better in the House? Why didn't they do better in the Senate? So the president makes himself the ultimate victim here. Over and over again, it's about him. And it's not about the fact that the other Republicans did okay. It's about him, and his family is complaining. Why isn't everybody coming out and defending him? Why isn't Lindsey Graham coming out and defending him? Because a lot of Republicans, it is time for them to say enough is enough.
Rick Santorum?
No Republican elected official is going to stand behind that statement. I mean, none of them will. They will stand behind elements of that statement. They will stand behind his comment about the polling and how you could make the argument that it was suppression and dishonest. I mean, you can stand behind the lack of transparency when it came to allowing the votes to be counted. There's evidence of that, and he provided some evidence for that. There are certain things they will stand behind in that statement because they reflect the reality. But much of that statement was not factual and was at times incendiary and not something that President of the United States should say or any elected officials.
You said
unless you have evidence to prove it, and at this point in time we don't, and we won't until there is an investigation as to what happened. And I got to tell you, I sat there and I listened to him talking about the votes being taken away from him, and then he shifted to Arizona and said, hey, I win this thing if they count the votes. Well, how can you say, well, we have to wait and count the votes in Arizona and I can win this thing if we're making it, but if you count the votes in Philadelphia, you're stealing them. The reality is in Pennsylvania, Democrats voted by mail and Republicans voted by in person. And it's because you asked them to do so. And so I think most people, hopefully, I just encourage people to listen, because I know there's a lot of people who think this election is stolen. A lot of people think there is fraud. And you know what? There may be fraud. There may be we don't know that right now. And for the president to go out there and claim that without any evidence of that is dangerous. And I just would say to the president, there may be some validity in some of the things that you believe, but to go out there and suggest that this is rigged, or that counting votes in my home state by clerks all over 67 counties, and as you kept losing votes, was somehow rigged. No, Democrats voted by mail. That's why your lead went away. Had they voted in person, you would be in the same position we are right now. So it's just it's very disappointing.
I think
shocking at times to hear the president say the things that he said, and I'm hopeful that Republicans will stand up at this moment and say what needs to be said about the integrity of our election, be tough, fight. I want him to fight. I want him to make sure that this election was held fairly, but I don't want him to draw these conclusions when he doesn't have the evidence to back it up.
Well, I just want to thank you for what you just said. First of all, it's not an easy thing to say, given the polarity in the country. But I just want to just say, as a dad, as an American, as a Democrat, as a human being, I appreciate you saying that. And I hope that other Republicans will also stand with you. You're right. You've been out all night. There are some things that you guys don't like, and you want to fight on those narrow issues. But to have the President of the United States take that position that he took, I think is very dangerous. But it's comforting to me that our system is holding. People are still counting these votes. We're still moving forward, and I just want to say I appreciate you saying that.
The governor of Georgia is going to count these votes. The governor of Arizona is going to count these votes. I mean, they're Republican governors.
As is the Secretary of State in Georgia, I believe.
Yeah, and the Secretary of State. So, look,
So what do other Republicans do? And what does a Mitch McConnell come out and say? What does...
Mitch McConnell's going to say what Mitch McConnell said today. We're going to count the votes. And that's what every Republican is going to say. The votes in Pennsylvania need to be counted. People voted. You have to count their votes. And if there are instances in which we find some sort of fraud or some sort of
Shenanigans or whatever.
shenanigans that are being played, you investigate them, you get to the bottom of them, and if they're substantial, I mean, there's this claim running out there that there's 130,000 votes, and the president referred to it, that came out of nowhere in Michigan. Okay, if that's true, prove it. Right. Go out there and find it and do it. And if it's true, then you got a serious problem, and then we attack it. But counting absentee ballots and counting mail-in ballots is not fraud.
Well, let's be clear. The president believes that an election is fraudulent when he does not win. That is what he believes. Before the election in 2016, when he thought he wasn't going to win, he predicted that the election would be rigged, that the election was fraudulent. When he didn't win the popular vote, he contended that the 3 million votes that he lost by were fraudulent votes, and he impaneled a commission, a government commission, to find those votes, and they never could. So really this is incredibly disturbing, but it's not surprising. This is who he is. I have big differences with Donald Trump over policy, and the same differences that I probably have with you over some of these policies. But what we've learned is how much our democracy relies on people of goodwill in high places respecting its tenets, understanding that its institutions are absolutely essential and to its functioning, and there is nothing more sacred than this institution, and he is willing to subjugate the institutions of our democracy to his own personal interests, and that has been true from the beginning. This is just the latest and the saddest chapter, and it's increasingly looking like the last one.
I want to add something, Gloria, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Part of what he said that's so terrible is that he's attacking actual Americans who right now, he said in Detroit they're not letting Republicans in. That's literally not true. It's just not true. Republicans and Democrats are standing shoulder to shoulder in Detroit right now counting those votes. So it's unbelievable the level of lying that he's doing. Putin could not come up with a better attack on our democracy.
Well,
I
couldn't agree with you more.
The President of the United States.
Let me say something that let's just be really blunt about this. Why is he talking about Detroit? Why is he talking about Philadelphia? Yeah. It's not subtle. It's race. It's race. It's Donald Trump's go-to play, and it's disgusting. So I just want to say that.
I appreciate you teeing it up. It's unbelievable that he can say these cities are known for corruption, et cetera, et cetera. There's corruption all across this country, in every institution. Why are you singling out these two black cities? Why are you denying the victory that these people have fought for? I'm upset about it because African Americans have fought so hard for the right to vote. I just want to finish. African Americans and our allies have fought so hard for the right to. This right to vote for us is precious. John Lewis died this year. This is something we went and we got young African Americans across this country to believe, to buy in, to stand in line, to do this thing, and have the President of the United States crap all over their efforts. It hurts. And you can say he doesn't mean it to be racial, but it feels racial to us.
It's disgraceful. I've covered politics a really long time, and I've never witnessed anything like this. And again, as you were saying, you're not surprised, but it's still stunning and striking at so many levels. You talk about the issue of race, I totally agree with you. But it's watching a president who is unable to accept loss or potential loss, defeat. Losing is for suckers. Remember that? If he can't accept it, so he has to find a way to undermine the process that has him losing. And the process that has him losing is democracy. How can you do that when you are president of the United States? Again, not surprising, but just shocking and very sad.
Facing growing likelihood of defeat in the U.S. presidential election, Donald Trump has again claimed without evidence that he won and that Democrats are trying to steal the election from him. In fact, Trump is losing ground as counting continues in 4 swing states that remain undecided. Let's take a closer look at those. The latest figures show Biden with 264 electoral college votes overall and President Trump with 214. Let's get down to the states. Georgia, where 16 electoral votes are up for grabs. There, it's an extremely tight race. Biden and Trump still neck and neck with 99% of votes counted. The latest count has shown the former vice president less than 2,000 votes behind the president and catching up. In Pennsylvania, that's the biggest yet to be decided with 20 electoral votes. Donald Trump currently holding a narrow lead. But that gap is constantly narrowing, and the remaining mail-in ballots are expected to favor Joe Biden. Well, in Arizona, votes are still being counted too. The AP news agency, which is our main source of election data, those are the numbers you're seeing from them. AP has called that state for Biden, but most other media outlets have not called it yet. 11 college votes at stake there, which we're including in Biden's count, but again, that could change. And finally, Nevada, Joe Biden there currently with a slim lead in Nevada. The state carries the 6 votes he needs to win. There's still around 190,000 votes left to count there, with most in Democratic-favored areas. So, with voting still being tallied, Donald Trump's path to victory is looking increasingly difficult. States in red or blue on the map you're seeing have been called by AP for Trump or Biden. States in lighter blue or pink are leaning toward Biden or Trump, respectively, and any one state will give Biden the win. Trump, however, needs a combination of states to hang on. So, facing tough odds, Trump has once again addressed the nation, stating multiple falsehoods and saying he's being robbed of a second term. The Trump campaign has launched legal action claiming fraud, trying to stop the count in some states. State election officials say there is zero evidence of wrongdoing. To the contrary, they say counting is proceeding smoothly across the country. Well, here's some of what the president had to say.
Challenge Joe and every Democrat to clarify that they only want legal votes, because they talk about votes, and I think they should use the word legal votes. We want every legal vote counted, and I want every legal vote counted. We want openness and transparency, no secret count rooms, no mystery ballots, no illegal votes being cast after Election Day. You have Election Day, and the laws are very strong on that. You have an Election Day, and they don't want votes cast after Election Day, and they want the process to be an honest one. It's so important. We want an honest election, and we want an honest count, and we want honest people working back there, because it's a very important job. So that's the way this country is going to win. That's the way the United States will win. And we think we will win the election very easily. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land. We'll see.
Our reporter, Amian Esif, is in Washington and following all of this. He joins us now. Amian, we just heard President Trump there talking about illegal votes and claiming that the election has been stolen from him. How are those comments going down in America?
Well, of course, Trump's supporters, those who voted for him, are looking at his chances of a second term slipping away in front of their eyes, and they're reinvigorated by his claims that he's going to be able to challenge the election results, that there's a reason for him to fight this in courts. But it's interesting to see the reaction from the rest of the country, from the majority who voted against Donald Trump, but also from the media. 3 major networks cut away from some of those comments he was making, reminding their audience that these were baseless claims that jeopardized the electoral process. So even Fox News, which is a major media network that is very favorable to Donald Trump very often, has repeated that there's no base for these claims that the election is being stolen from him. So a very divided reaction to these claims that he's making.
Now, I understand that election protests are being reported in a number of places in the U.S. And can you tell us more about what those demonstrations are about?
That's exactly right. They're about these comments that Trump has made. So a lot of his supporters have gone to places like in Arizona where they're counting ballots to protest that they need to continue to count the ballots, because there in Arizona, Trump is gaining an advantage from these votes that are just being counted now, so absentee ballots and things like that. Whereas in Michigan, where Biden was declared the winner, they have gone to polling places and demand that the count be called off. But on the other side, Biden supporters, or just people who are worried about Trump's comments about not accepting the results, are taking to the streets and demanding that every vote should be counted, that we do this election like we've done it every year, that we count all the ballots, absentee, mail-in, everything like that, until we have a final result, and then determine a winner of the presidency.
Okay, so we've heard from President Trump. One thing he did say that is definitely true is that the office of president is very important. Another man wanting to become president, of course, Joe Biden, he's been speaking. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Democracy is sometimes messy. It sometimes requires a little patience as well. But that patience has been rewarded now for more than 240 years with a system of governance that's been the envy of the world. And we continue to feel, Senator and I, we continue to feel very good about where things stand. We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners. So I ask everyone to stay calm, all the people to stay calm. The process is working. The count is being completed, and we'll know very soon.
So Joe Biden there saying he's on track to win, sounding optimistic. When will we know who's actually won? What states should we be watching out for over the next few hours?
Well, Georgia is one that is promising to have its votes done very soon. About 99% of the votes have been counted there, and it's down to a margin of under 2,000 votes at this point. So very close, and that would be a state that either Biden could flip for the Democrats or Trump could secure for himself. So we're watching Georgia right now, and that's going to be coming in next. Pennsylvania has most of its ballots counted, but in the other states, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, the electoral officials are saying everybody has to be patient, that they're not going to announce any results until all the votes have been counted because the margins are so close. So those are the states that we're going to watch right now. Pennsylvania, of course, in Trump's favor, but as more votes are being counted, that could flip toward Biden, and that's one of the main reasons why Biden is optimistic, because if he wins Pennsylvania, he wins the presidency.
Very exciting indeed. DW's Amin Esif there in Washington. Thank you very much. Well, our Peter Roledal is also following this, of course, very closely. He's with me in the studio to take a closer look at some of those claims that President Trump has been making. Let's first listen in to more of what the president had to say.
I've been talking about mail-in voting for a long time. It's really destroyed our system. It's a corrupt system, and it makes people corrupt even if they aren't by nature. But they become corrupt. It's too easy. They want to find out how many votes they need, and then they seem to be able to find them. They wait, and then they find them.
Donald Trump there casting doubt on the legitimacy of mail-in ballots, calling it a corrupt system, talking about secret count rooms. Extraordinary from a U.S. president. What are we to make of these claims?
You know, if I could be honest with you, Terry, I kind of wish I knew where a lot of this was coming from. I mean, I think there are no secret count rooms. Both parties have observers during the elections. The Trump campaign has said also in Pennsylvania, for instance, that they would like observers during the tabulation process. The state has agreed to that in theory, but warned that it might slow down the process. You know, these claims of mystery ballots, of illegal votes, officials and observers have both said that this election has been remarkably smooth despite taking place in the middle of a pandemic. Reports of irregularities have been absolutely minimal, and the mistakes that have come up have largely been corrected quite swiftly. You know, we're looking at an election that's seen the highest turnout in over a century. As I said, it's taken place in the middle of a pandemic, which has forced a lot of states to, you know, come up with different ways to try to make this process a bit more smoother. For instance, relying more on, and also, first of all, obviously, to have people stay safe during this pandemic. So it is taking longer because we are looking at an immense backlog of mail-in votes. So there's nothing unusual about any of the things that we've been seeing these past days. I think what's probably truer is that we're looking at an incumbent president who currently has a very, very narrow path to victory, much more narrow than Joe Biden at this stage, it looks like, and who's essentially making up, you know, trumped up allegations to maybe save face and to cast doubt on the integrity of a perfectly fair democratic process.
Well, this is what I'd like to talk about, the process, because President Trump, you can understand if he's afraid he's going to lose, he's getting a bit desperate, but the things he's saying cast doubt on the entire American electoral system. He's saying it's corrupt. Right. He's essentially accusing the American electoral process of being unfair and corrupt. What sort of message does that give to the American people and to the other people in the Republican Party? Can they sign off on that?
Well, we've seen some Republicans starting to distance themselves. The governor of Maryland, for instance, Larry Hogan, coming out yesterday saying that Trump needs to stop casting doubt on this. I mean, keep in mind, this is not just about Trump. We're looking at a lot of Republican states right now. We're looking at Senate races. We're looking at local races. Does that mean that all those election results are illegitimate as well? The Republicans have overperformed in Congress. Does that mean that we need recounts there as well, that those votes no longer matter? I don't think Trump would agree to that. So, I mean, where does this leave us? It leaves us in a process where, an immensely chaotic process. We're looking at absolutely essential that whoever comes out victorious of this process is considered a legitimate presidency. Trump is currently doing everything in his power to undermine that legitimacy. And keep in mind, he could still win. Does that make him an illegitimate president?
Remarkable.
Those are the questions.
Absolutely.